Good morning. It is Friday, April 10th, a day that we call Good Friday. I'm coming to you this morning from a small country cemetery that is near our home. As I was preparing to go live this morning, I spent some time walking around and looking at the cemetery and just seeing people's graves and headstones and seeing beloved fathers and grandmothers and aunts and sisters and brothers, and it just struck me as this is a place of deep sorrow. And while Jesus's place of burial did not look anything like this, this is the day that we pause to meditate on and remember that he too died and was buried. Many people have asked and thought about why it is that we call today Good Friday, because it hardly seems good. And this morning, as I was reflecting on it, it occurred to me that it wasn't good for what it was, but it was good for what it became. It wasn't good for what it was in that moment when the disciples were completely distraught, had run away in fear. They felt like everything that they had set their lives on was at stake. When they were completely confused about what God was up to, it wasn't good then. But 3 days later and centuries later, as we look back, it's good for what it became. You know, I think that that's how God sees us too. That he looks at us not for how we are when we come to him broken and sinful and falling short of how it is that he's designed us and intended us to be. He doesn't look at us then. He looks at what we can become in him. And then all of a sudden the idea about Good Friday seems to make a lot more sense. This Good Friday, that we call it, actually began last night. If we read in our scriptures, the Hebrew understanding of a day begins at sunset and then goes to sunset. And so Good Friday actually began last night as Jesus and the disciples gathered around and they celebrated dinner together. They celebrated Passover. They celebrated the freedom from slavery and the hope that God instilled in his chosen people as he made it possible for them to escape from Egypt. And then, of course, this ends on Sunday with another celebration. I think it's very interesting to me and just very telling of our God that this weekend begins and ends with celebration. It begins and ends with a sense of freedom and hope. It began with a retelling of God's redemptive hand in freeing his people from literal slavery, and it ends with the hope and the freedom that God extends to all people, all of creation, for literal and figurative freedom from everything that binds us, everything that holds us back, and it gives us tangible hope in the face of agony and suffering and pain and confusion. I was reading this morning on Twitter, and a doctor had posted that in working with her COVID patients, she herself had come down with COVID. And she had thankfully recovered from that disease and had just been tested to see if she had antibodies in her system, enough antibodies that she could donate her plasma. You see, there's this new development that's been created just in the last week or so as a way to treat the most extreme cases of COVID. And it's using plasma that has antibodies of those individuals who had COVID, who've recovered from it, and whose blood contains antibodies for it. And for those individuals who had the disease and have recovered and have antibodies, they can donate blood and their plasma can be used to treat others. And it was so fitting that I read that this morning, because I think that's indeed a beautiful picture of what God has done for us. That Jesus took on our disease, the disease of being human, of the disease of living in this fallen world. And he got the full disease of sinfulness, and he overcame it and then shares it with us. That's a beautiful picture of Jesus' love and his redemption for each one of us. And that's what it is that we pause to meditate on and pray about this Good Friday. I would encourage you today to spend some time really thinking and reflecting about what it is Jesus has done for each one of us. It's so tempting to want to skip ahead to the glorious celebration of his resurrection, to declare the tomb is empty, and indeed it is. But we need to stop now and listen and pause and sit with the Lord and allow the Lord to sit with us on this Good Friday, on this day where we remember that Jesus went to the cross on our behalf. Yes, it began with celebration, but this day ends with his death and his burial. That's a profound thing that we don't want to skip over and we don't want to miss. And so today I would encourage you to take some time, maybe find a local cemetery where you can walk around. The reality of walking in a cemetery on Good Friday, at least for me, was quite profound. And spend some time in Scripture and spend some time in prayer. If you have a devotion or something that you're working through, that's a wonderful thing to do. If you aren't sure how to go about reflecting and pausing on Good Friday, I just want to make available to you a prayer guide, a reflection guide that I wrote for Good Friday. And I'll put it here in the comments so you have access to it. It's just a PDF download. And what I did is I looked at 9 different experiences Jesus went through on Good Friday, starting with celebration and ending with burial. And I include scriptures from Matthew chapters 26 and 27 and just wrote a short reflection on each of those 9 experiences and have some prayer prompts and a hands-on practice that you can do to just pause and sit with the reality and the pain of Jesus' death and burial. I'd encourage you to do that today sometime, perhaps by yourself, perhaps with those with whom you are social distancing, or maybe get on the phone or Zoom and do it with a loved one that you're separated from and maybe would be in a regular year spending Easter together with. Well, today indeed is a good day. And today indeed is a day that is significant in our faith story. I just want you to know that I'm thinking about you and praying for you, and I look forward to celebrating this Easter resurrection with you on Sunday. But first, we will pause long enough to think about Good Friday. God bless you. Wash your hands. Take care, and we'll check in with you again tomorrow.